Hi, I'm Linda Davis, a member of Anna Aspenus's creative team. Of all the products that Anna creates, ArtsyTransfers are my favorite, especially when combined with her art play palettes. The PSD layered ArtsyTransfers provide me with the flexibility to create unique transfers and backgrounds for my photos and pages. Today, I'd like to share my strategy for mixing layered ArtsyTransfers to create a unique background for this two-page spread. You might be wondering why I would want to mix transfers. On this two-page spread, I actually created the left side more than a week before I added the right side, even though the photos were taken on the same day. I used Art Play Palette Niche to create the left side with just one photo of my granddaughter playing in the snow that morning. In the original layout, I gave that photo a black and white treatment. There aren't actually any artsy transfers on the left side, only PNG overlays and transfers from the ArtPlay palette. When I finally got around to creating the right side with some of the photos that I had taken that afternoon, I realized that the color tones were not going to work well together even after making some adjustments in Lightroom. Although the photo on the left is already clipped to snowy photo blends, it's obvious that it was taken in the snow, as it has a much whiter background than the photos on the left, which were taken in the afternoon. To solve that problem, I gave all of the photos the same photo treatment, a more warm and creamy look than the original black and white treatment, and I brought back in just a touch of the color. For the background, I initially used a solid paper 1 from Art Play Palette Niche. However, for the double page spread, I blended solid paper 1 into solid paper 2 from Art Play Palette Sojourn with a layer mask, and you can see that over here in my layers panel. I changed the blend mode to luminosity at 75%, so I still have the same texture from my original layout. And on the right, I rotated that paper counterclockwise and blended it with another layer mask using the same settings to extend the texture across the two pages. When I create a two-page spread, I think about design principles like balance and repetition across both sides so that the two pages look like they belong together. The two sides don't have to be exactly the same, just work together. After I gave all the photos the same photo treatment, I adjusted the color of the ping lace and transfers on the left with color overlays from the Styles panel and a hue and saturation adjustment layer. Then, by combining two different files of ArtsyTransfers on the right, I was able to create balance and repetition so that the pages look like they are one. In the process, I created my own version of an Artsy paper using Anna's ArtsyTransfers and papers. To me, this flexibility makes the ArtsyTransfers especially valuable for my scrapbooking. So what are my steps? First, I open a PSD Artsy transfer and I drag the layers over on top of my paper. In Photoshop, while the layers are still highlighted, I can group them with the command by pressing Command plus or Control plus G. That cannot be done in Photoshop Elements, but dragging over the layers is the same process. Second, I work with just one group of artsy transfers at a time. In Photoshop, I turn off the visibility with the little icon, with the eye icon, and in Photoshop Elements, I recommend just bringing one set of transfers over at a time, turn off all the layers, and then turn them back on as you make decisions. Third, I experiment with the selected layers that are turned back on with their color, their order, the opacity, the blend modes. I move them up and out of the groups. For instance, the splatters and art strokes would go more toward the top. If you can't make groups, move them up in your layers panel and either leave the unselected layers turned off at the bottom of your layers panel or delete them. So what does this process look like? For the sake of this video, I have already dragged over the ArtsyTransfers and numbered the sequence of them that I used. However, I want to give you a rough idea of the process of creating a new transfer. But note, I've already got a white spatter that you can see over here, another spatter that I turned on that I used from ArtsyTransfer Neige, a piece of lace that I placed here, and to this I have attached a color overlay. And this I selected the color from the color picker to blend with my photos. I put the blend mode on color and the opacity at 25%. Okay, I have an overlay, and it looks like I need to move that overlay over a little more. I have a brush, and I need to move that over. A tissue texture, and I'm going to move that just a little. And another, this is just an PNG transfer from Artplay Palette Neige. I'm going to move it up. And it has a hue and saturation adjustment layer. And if we look at the settings on this, from the preset drop-down menu, instead of default, I chose sepia, and I left the settings just as they are. Okay, and then I have one more texture, and I'm going to move that up just a little, right here. Okay, and this is from the Artsy Layered Template 223. That's my source for the frames and the text box and the basic design that I used. Okay, so let's get started with this. This is my group, and as I said, if you cannot make groups, then just move one group of layers over at a time. I have already numbered this sequence for the sake of time in this video. However, the order they are in here is exactly the order that they are provided for by in Anna's package of transfers. So I'm going to turn it on, and we're going to turn on one layer at a time. There's a texture that I used. I did not use the brown art stroke because I wanted the softer line that the paint provided, nor did I use any of the tape. I did use the stain, which you can see up at the top, and I used the white paint. But on this the white paint, it's a little too yellow for my layout, so I have already selected a color. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste that into the color picker, and then I'm going to recolor it by pressing Control Shift Delete. It gives me a little dialog box, and I'm using my foreground color, and you can see that it changes the color tone of that. I did not use the brown paint. I did change the color of the ivory stain so it would blend better with the paint change that I made on the white paint. I'm going to press Control Shift Delete again. On the brown stain, which appears here, I reduced the opacity to about 30%. So let's get that. No, just a little more. There. That's close enough. And I did not turn on the ivory stain. So I'm going to move these up, and think of this as just a long layers panel. I'm going to move these up in my layers panel. And I didn't move it up and up. This one up. This one up. And this one up. Now, as I said, if you have Photoshop Elements, you can either delete it or just leave those layers off at the bottom of your layers panel. And I'm just going to move them down at the very bottom of my layers panel. If I want them back on, I can turn them back on. Next, let's work, and while we're working with this, I think I'm going to turn on my photo up here so that I can see how this is affecting my photo, and I'm going to enlarge it a little because I want to see how what I've got is affecting my photo, and it looks like this one is going to have some effect. So I'm going to use a brush on that layer, and I'm just going to use a soft round brush, and I'm going to, my opacity is about 90%, that'll be good, and I'm just going to add a little more to make sure I don't have her face covered with anything. Okay, the rest looks okay. Now I'm going to turn on ArtsyTransfer Neige number 2, and I'm just going to go through the layers again. The lace I want, however, I want it to be more sepia in tone, so I'm going to add another adjustment layer, hue and saturation. I'm going to clip it to the lace. I'm going to choose sepia from the drop-down menu, and then I'm just going to close it. Okay, then I did not use the cross. I did use the art stroke, but I think that art stroke, let me get my move tool back, was more over here. I used the lilac stain, and on the lilac stain I recolored it, and I'm going to cut and paste on that color that I selected as well. No, that's not the color. Let me go back and recopy it. Copy. There we go. And I'm going to recolor by pressing Control Shift Delete. The next one is a transfer to which I added a mask, and you can see I really need that mask because it is affecting the picture. So I'm going to turn it back on by pressing Shift and clicking on the mask, and that worked to get it out of the way. Another stain, and I recolored this stain as well. I'm going to press Control Shift Delete because it has the same numbers. I used another transfer, and this is the line, that soft paint line, and I want that to have a sepia tone as well. So I'm going to press Option and the adjustment layer icon, choose Hue and Saturation. I'm going to clip it to my transfer, and I'm going to choose the sepia preset and close that out. I did not turn on the cream paint, but I did use the stain. Yes. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to move the layers that I used up. And the art stroke, the lilac stain, this I'll move these together, and one more. Okay, now I have one layer that I used from the ArtsyTransfer Neige. It was a stain, and I'm just going to move that up so it's available. And I'm going to turn these off, and I'm just going to put them at the very bottom. If I want to use them, they're available, but I'm going to just put them at the very bottom of my layers panel, out of the way. Okay, now let's put these in the sequence that I used for this layout. That means 7 is going to go up, 6 is going to go up. And I'm looking to see, because I want to make sure that I don't get anything covering my granddaughter's face. 8. 9 has a hue and saturation layer, so I need to move that together. So what is this looking like? Okay, and 17 would go above 18, 21 would go below 20, 13, and 11 and 12. I'm going to move them up. I have, this is 14, 15, and 16. Oh, I got something that happened in that one. Was that 14? Yes. So I need to make an adjustment on this mask. So I'm going to press B to get my brush back, and I'm going to just take out a little bit of that. Okay. And then I have one more layer. I'm going to move that up. And then let's zoom back in so we can see what I've created. That looks just about it. And if I put back on my composite, yes, almost. Looks like I might be missing, one stain. Yes, almost the same, almost exactly the same. But I hope by making some adjustments to the photos and combining two different PSD Artsy transfers, I was able to unify the photos and create a unique background for my two-page spread. And while it may not be the same, exactly the same, that's kind of hard to do at times. You just have to experiment, and you can play around with the layers, all right, and decide what's going to work, what doesn't work. Make some changes on the masking, change the blend modes if you need to. Whatever you like for your pages. And I hope you found this strategy for working with multiple Artsy transfers helpful. Anna's Artsy transfers are available in her store under Artsy Transfers, and let Anna know if you have any additional questions. Thank you.